bring that after.
All right, the gang's all here. Start, I call this meeting order. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we get a roll call of the members present, please?
Councilmember Justin?
Here, sorry.
Councilmember Witten?
I am here.
Councilmember Conover?
Present.
Councilmember Graham?
Here.
Councilmember Larson? Councilmember Bozick?
Yep.
Councilmember Rivas?
Here.
Commissioner Good?
Here.
Commissioner Blaney? Here. Commissioner Biggs?
Here.
Mr. Quake?
Here.
Okay. Mr. Rose?
Here.
And Mr. Vesely?
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Is that everyone?
I assume Jeff is on his way.
You're here.
Here. Barely.
Approval of the December 2016 Foundation minutes. I assume you've all had an opportunity to see them.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We're going to jump out of order just for a second here. So let's get right to the Capital Cities presentation. I think what we'll do is, at the suggestion of a couple members, we'll do the Capital Cities presentation, then we'll have the lawyers present the stuff we need to review, and then we'll reorg, and I'll pass the gavel, and that'll be the end of that story. So, please.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. My name's Amanda Black. I'm with Capital Cities, the investment advisor to the foundation. I have a couple things on the agenda today. The first is to give a brief market review of 2016 and looking ahead to 2017. And then the second item is to cover your quarterly performance. So if you're following along in a hard copy, the first presentation is behind tab 1. We also have it on the screen. This is just more for informational purposes, so I'll be brief. On page 2, just looking back at 2016, the environment in which you had to invest the first few months of this foundation were pretty interesting. In June of 2016, we had Brexit, which roiled the financial markets for about a week. After that, all attention shifted to central bank policy as well as the U.S. presidential election. So those were really the big stories of the year that affected investment markets. The U.S. was certainly the bright spot amidst investment markets across the globe, with a really strong U.S. dollar and improving interest rate environment. So that's the broad market the broad economy. On page 3, this is just the investment returns across broad markets. This is not your portfolio. This is more, again, just for information. Lots of numbers on this page. We just show returns across calendar years for many different types of investments. The takeaways on this page are that U.S. equity has really been a great place to be if you're an investor. Smaller company stocks have performed better than larger company stocks, and equity has beat fixed income. Domestic equity has been better than foreign equity. That all is shown there in the numbers below. The column that reads 2016, you can see that stocks were up handily in the U.S. markets. They were more difficult in the foreign markets, and then fixed income was pretty modest. On page 4, we just provide a few points for our clients to think about looking ahead to 2017. We're not trying to guess what's going to happen in the markets, but we like to think about these different macroeconomic themes and what impact they might have on different investment types. Certainly some big themes are what will happen with Trump as president. There are some policies that could be favorable to markets and some that could be negative. So everything from lower regulation and lower taxes to immigration policies, those different things could cause a wide range of effects on investment markets. Also, some things that we're carefully watching are the UK and Brexit as it continues to unfold. As those kind of trade deals continue to be worked out between the UK and other European countries, that may have some impact on markets. Again, the U.S. Continues to be a relative bright spot with GDP growth in the range of 2 to 2.5% is what the expectations are. Job growth has improved a bit. And kind of looking abroad, we continue to deal with very difficult interest rate policies across all the central banks. There's some detail on the page. As far as the U.S., we saw the Fed raise rates a week ago to a target range of 0.75 to 1%. That was following another hike in mid-December of 2016. So here we've seen 2 rate hikes in the last few months relative to not seeing any for a very long time. As a result, interest rates have begun to go up. That's been difficult for fixed income. I'll talk about that a little bit more when I look at the fourth quarter. But on the other hand, higher interest rates mean that perhaps we could actually earn some money on cash in the future.
For the minutes, Vicki, show Jeff's here.
So on page 5, like I said, we do not try to guess what will happen in the markets, but instead we try to stay aware of what's going on and have knowledge of what that could mean for our investors. And on page 5, this is where we give some ideas on how we think investors should broadly approach their asset allocation. So we think that you should continue to maintain as much diversification in your portfolio as you can per your risk tolerance and time horizon. So in your case, that means maintaining some allocation to equities, both on the active side and the passive side. We also think that within fixed income, investors should try to be as diversified as possible, try to eliminate some of the interest rate exposure in portfolios by using different styles of fixed income, which is what you do. And then to the extent that's possible, we think our clients should explore some diversifying assets. For you, that means more active management in some of your fixed income and equity. So on the right there, what that is, those are expected returns that Cowen Associates, they're a large investment consulting firm in California. Every year they put forth investment expectations across different asset classes. I just wanted to point out a couple things. They're suggesting that domestic equity could earn an 8.3% return. Now, I do want to caution you that they look at this on a 10-year basis, so they're not saying that in any given year you should put any type of proof on that statement. But what I found interesting was that particular number was 8.8% last year, so this is actually the biggest drop that I've seen them kind of put in year over year. Fixed income is rather modest at 3%. That cash return of 2.25% seems unlikely this year, but perhaps over a 10-year period, that might be a more likely return for cash. So just thought you might want to have some of those numbers in mind. And then finally, for this presentation, we want you to look at what page is that? I wrote my notes over the page, I apologize. The last page. Now, for the first few months of getting this foundation, the investment program up and running, there was a lot of work done on the asset allocation, the investment managers, the investment policy statement, coming up with customized reporting, all of those things. Well, now that all of those things are in place and we're getting close to 1 year of investments of a timeline, we wanted to put forth a more planned approach to how we help you fulfill your fiduciary guidelines over time. So this is our proposed agenda for the upcoming meetings, and I know that these months may not coincide with when you actually schedule your meetings. The idea is, though, that you'll be meeting quarterly. So it's our plan to bring you your quarterly performance as expected, but then also bring you a special presentation that ties directly to your fiduciary obligations. So for instance, right now we're talking about the overall market environment because one of your duties is to understand the context in which you're investing. The next meeting, we'd like to do a comprehensive fee analysis of your investment managers and your custodian and your consultant, which is us. In the following meeting, we'd like to just reconfirm the portfolio construction, and then after that, we would like to do an annual review of the investment policy statement. So all of these things we view in the course of normal business, but they're designed to help you ensure that you're fulfilling your fiduciary duties. And of course, we can seek any feedback on that, and we can adjust this as needed given your timeline. Any questions on this segment of my presentation? Okay. Now if we could switch to the December 31st report, please. This report, if you could go one page in. Okay, this report is behind tab 2. So the first page you see is the market overview. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I just talked about the whole year, but I do want to tell you a few comments very specific to the fourth quarter of 2016 because this report is covering that fourth quarter. If you look at the middle bar, so again, these are broad market returns. This is not your portfolio yet. Even if it's hard to see, you can just see simply that the blue bars are mostly positive in that middle chart. Those are equities. So for the most part, U.S. equities had a really nice quarter, though it did matter in which sector you were investing. Non-U.S. equities had a more difficult quarter. However, the big story for the quarter was fixed income, which is the bottom chart. The 10-year Treasury bond had its worst sell-off in over 20 years, so that was very difficult for fixed income investors. The Barclays Aggregate Index, which is the proxy for U.S. fixed income, was down 3% in one single quarter. So very difficult market for fixed income, and that's directly related to the fact that the Fed has started raising rates, and that is negative for prices within fixed income. So I'll talk about how that affected your portfolio here as we move into page 2. So at the top of page 2, you see your investment allocation. There is detail on this on the next page, but we don't really need to show that. Basically, you have an asset allocation of 40% equity to 60% fixed income. The chart on the right is the allocation that is determined and documented in your investment policy statement. The allocation on the left is your actual allocation across all your different underlying managers. The summary of that kind of comment is that you are directly in line with your policy, so there's no need for any type of rebalancing. On the left in the middle, we have your market values. The total foundation ended the quarter at $151,807,705. And the results for the quarter were a positive return of 0.3%, so about 1/3 of 1%. So a modest return, certainly affected by the fixed income market, but still positive. That brings your since inception return, so from April 1st through December 31st, so that's 9 months, that brings that return to 4.7%, so really strong returns for that 9-month period. At the bottom of the page, we give you a quick snapshot on how all of your underlying managers are doing. So we've got stoplights that cover qualitative items as well as quantitative items, which include long and short-term performance. We have all green lights and no changes to report there. Okay, if we could look at page 4. This is just where we show your total performance. Now, because this is still relatively new, we don't have a lot of periods to show you. As more time passes, you'll see things like 1 year, 3 year, 5 year. So again, the numbers here are not different than what I just told you. We just show them in relation to your benchmarks. So I did want to point that out. So for the last quarter, again, your return was 0.3%, 1/3 of 1%. Your benchmark, if you had been allocating your portfolio in passive mandates, so just your passive index, was down about 1/3 of 1%. So you had outperformance of your active managers. That's how to look at that. Now, the performance target was 1.23%. That's simply taking the 5% target and dividing it by 4. So you definitely trailed that this quarter, but that's not surprising because that's just an absolute number. It's not taking into account what's going on in the markets. So for the since inception period, you can look at those same comparisons. Your portfolio was up 4.67. Your passive index was up 3.87, so considerable outperformance of your active managers. And then the performance target, so 3 months or 3 quarters into that 5% target, was 3.73. So you also were outpacing that target. So very strong returns all around. Just a couple things I'd like to point you to within the report, and we can discuss any level of detail that you'd like, but I do want to show you why your portfolio outperformed in a tough market. And the best way to look at that is page 16. So rather than simply putting all of your fixed income in benchmark-like strategies, you've also used some more flexible fixed income strategies that are not as tied to interest rate risk. Because you have 60% of your portfolio in fixed income, we think this is very important. So one example is the Loomis Sales Fund on page 16. This fund, denoted by letter A for the quarter, had a return of 1.47%, again, versus the index that was down 3%. The same story occurred for the Western Fund on the next page. So on page 17, the Western Total Return Fund was up 1.46%, very similarly, versus the index, again, down 3%. So having allocations to some of these more flexible bond funds is why your portfolio was able to be kind of held up better than the market in a pretty tough environment. I just have a couple other notes to mention. There's nothing to look at here. I just have some detail on some of the municipal bonds and things like that. If you do have a hard copy, it's the very first page into the report. I don't think it's up there, so I apologize. I'll just have to read the detail. If you all will remember, there are some externally held municipal bonds that are not part of the Schwab account that we're reporting on. A couple of interest and principal payments were received on those, so those are things we track. So, for instance, a deposit of $3.3 million occurred in February, so that's money that we brought into the Schwab account that's in cash at the moment. Also, the next item down, the Hammond municipal bonds, there were 3 of those when we first started working with you on this. One of them matured back last year. Another one matured just recently, and we continue to receive interest payments on those that still remain. So that was another deposit of about $3 million that came in. So those are things that we continue to track, but just wanted to report to you as information. So I know that was a lot of numbers and kind of quick, but I'll pause there and see what kind of questions you might have.
So at the end of December of last year, the amount of money then to be transferred into the county from the foundation of earnings was a little north of $6 million, correct?
That's correct. So that 4.7% return equates to $6.1 million and some change.
So as we chatted a little bit the other day, we have enough, because of these retired bonds, we have enough in our cash to make that transfer without...
Yes. So it's actually perfect timing. The amount that you had in cash as of yesterday was $9,415,000.
Okay.
So if you take away the distribution of basically $6.19 million, that leaves you with $3.2 million in cash. And that $3.2 million is 2.1% of your portfolio, and your cash target is 2%. So not only does it give you the cash for your distribution, but it also brings your portfolio back into line with its target allocation.
And I think we discussed, just for a moment, Scott, wherever you are on there, the way we were thinking that the distribution would be done, it's still through them and then back into the county, correct? I mean, we're not going to...
Yeah, I mean, my only concern on that subject was we've gotten principal payments back from, like, say, the Hammond bond. I still want that to go through the process of being transferred from here to Schwab, and then cash comes back, so all the tracking is the same.
Yep, so from our point of view, that's how we would prefer that to happen, and that's how we intend for that to happen, just to continue to emphasize transparency, have all the money be where it's supposed to be before it starts moving around. That way we'll be able to track it more clearly going forward. But still, I want to highlight the fact that you have cash right now is really a nice kind of fortuitous thing, because there's no need now to sell anything out of the portfolio and incur any transaction costs.
Right, that's great. Timing is everything. Great. Okay, well, that's my couple of questions off the top of my head. Anybody else have any questions on the presentation there on the end, gentlemen? Seems like we had a pretty strong showing for a very uncertain, weird time.
Yes.
A great time to be an American citizen. Anybody else have any questions about this? It's pretty straightforward stuff. Do you have any questions of us, Amanda?
I do not, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so, I'm going to turn this, the next thing would be the consideration adoption for independent audit request for proposal, and I think I'll turn this over to the lawyers at the end of the table. So, gentlemen, how shall we proceed? Consideration and adoption for the RFP for the audit.
Correct. As you guys are aware, the statute, the enabling statute requires that the foundation has its own independent yearly audit, not a state board of accounts situation. So this RFP is requesting that proposal be returned to us so that we could interview and hire the independent audit or auditor to go through the process. For that, the only thing we're missing would be we were unaware at the time when we were putting this together when the next meeting would be. So we would need to add that as to the return date. I would actually kind of work back a little bit from the next meeting after the return date, so then we could work on whether we needed to do interviews or presentations and things like that. But frankly, this came right out, I worked with Harold. Harold actually drafted it. I think it's a wonderful document. It goes right out of the statute. We gave as much guidance and help to the accounting firms that would be looking at this as we possibly could. That's why the attachments would include our most recent financial report, who are, that our money is being held by Charles Schwab, copies of the statute, copies of our enabling ordinance, et cetera, so that they would have an idea of what they would be getting themselves into. And obviously, we also provided that information so that the pricing would be in line with the amount of work that would need to be accomplished.
So along that vein, if I could interject for just a second, Scott. So we know we have to have our quarterly meeting sometime April, May, June. It makes sense to probably have it in June, would be my suspicion, so that we can get as far along sort of update on how our quarter is doing. So let's assume that we had our quarterly meeting in June. How much time do you think we need?
I would think you'd want these, I would think 3 or 4 weeks before the meeting, have the responses returned.
Right.
I think that would give about 8 weeks for people to respond. That should be enough time to put the proposals together.
Okay.
And that way this board would have 4 weeks to review them and then decide whether we were going to move in the direction of interviews or, some of those decisions are hard to make until you know how many you get back. If you get 2, sometimes you bring them both in and have the interviews. If you get 35 of them, then you may go through a process to weed that pile down a little bit. But I think 8 weeks to get a response back, 4 weeks before the next meeting, that would be my rough timeline or my suggestion.
Can I ask of the treasurer and auditor, did you have any questions or concerns or input that you would be needing to make in this process that you could think of?
Well, I'd like to request that you direct the treasurer and myself to prepare an annual report that will be subject to audit. You will need to adopt a financial report that will incorporate by reference the performance and evaluation report, exactly in what format we're going to have to deal with that. But we will have an annual report that compiles the information and hopefully to present it to you for adoption at your next meeting. And then that document will be the item that will be audited.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And you think you can have it done for our next meeting?
Yes. It will be bare bones, because basically there has been very little movement. There's been a movement of money from a county fund over to Charles Schwab. There's been movements of bond repayments and interest over to Charles Schwab. So the first year will be pretty bare bones.
And Okay, well, yeah, anybody have a problem with that? I assume we want them to do that. All right, so please do that. Any other thoughts that you two might have in this process then? I guess that pretty much would wrap up your involvement. You too, Harold. It's more speaking to the auditor and treasurer, but certainly, Harold, I care very much what you had to say. Okay, all right, so with that in mind, can I get a motion to adopt the RFP for the independent auditor?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion?
Was the proposed timeline okay for everyone?
Yeah,
Yes.
does that sounds good to everybody? Yes, Scott. Any other questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. All right, the other thing is this resolution for distribution timing dates. This is the thing I emailed everybody about when I had that one conversation with the consultants, Amanda Black and Joe Billy, two first name, Joe Bob. They had suggested or asked that we set some, by way of a resolution or adopting some document, I did it in the form of a resolution, some date certain when we might be expecting them to, A, give us the amount of money we'd earned as of that December 31st date, and then a target date for transfer. Obviously, this first year, right now, the dates have passed, but they'd also asked that I do a resolution establishing the type of accrual method that we're going to use, but that's already in our investment policy, so I reviewed that with Amanda, and she said, you're right, we missed it, that's fine, so we didn't have to do that one. So what's in front of us here were the dates they suggested, actually. They said that by January 15th of each year, they would be able to tell us the number from the December 31st trigger date, and then February 15th would be the transfer date, no later than. So that's exactly what this resolution says, that we're establishing those two dates. The consultant shall advise the board set earnings amount on or before January 15th of the subsequent year, and the investment consultant shall cause said earnings to be transferred per the investment policy enabling statute, that's basically the 5% stuff, into the Porter County government funds on or before February 15th of that year. So does the treasurer or auditor have any concerns with those dates, or do those seem okay? All right. With that having been said, I would ask for a motion to adopt this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And we're just moving right along. I'm really trying to stretch out my time in charge. At this point, I'd like to take a break and get a couple of photos. I think that we're down to the attorney's report. Anything that you guys want to report before we move into the reorg?
I have nothing. I think the RFP for the independent financial audit, we're going to the last piece of the complete project, so I think we're well on our way.
And do any of the members, including non-voting members, treasurer, auditor, have any questions for our attorneys at this point? Anything you guys need from them? Okay. With that having been said, let's move on to the reorg. As you know, we have to have a reorganization meeting once a year. We're at that point, so what's your pleasure?
Motion to appoint Mike Jessen as president or board chairman.
Second.
There's a motion, there's a nomination on the floor for Michael Jessen. Any discussion? Nominations are closed. Congratulations, Mike. We got to quit meeting like this. Now it's up to you.
Okay, the only remaining position to be filled at this particular time, because our treasurer and secretary serve in those capacities, that will continue as designed by our original bylaws, et cetera, we do need to discuss the vice chairman's position. So I think there may be a proposal that, Harold, if you could present that to us, I'd appreciate it.
There was a discussion previously before the meeting in regards to the vice chairman position. The thought was that nominated for that, I believe. And the bylaws would be amended to allow that. And in other words, to have a chairman and a vice chairman be from the same body. Right now, the bylaws specify that the chairman and the vice chairman can't be of the same, or have to be of a separate body, so one from the commissioners, one from the council, and vice versa. And I prepared this for circulation. Essentially, it just amends the bylaws to permit that. There was a request that was made of me in regards to the bylaw amendment as well, that the chair and vice chair could not be of the same political party. And so
Make copies of that, Harold?
Yeah.
There, how many are there? So everybody?
Thank you.
Want to continue, Harold?
Yeah, so for simplicity's sake, all that the resolution does is amend Article 5, Section 1 of the bylaws, and that's quoted there in italics as amended. The original version of that section is in footnote 3, so that everyone can get to it quickly. It's, the only change is paragraph 1. The officers of the foundation must consist of the chair and the vice chair posting, and such other officers of the board of trustees may designate by resolution. Each officer shall be elected from amongst the members of the board of trustees, deleting from the original the requirement that chair and vice chair can be from the local county legislature.
Motion to adopt the amendment.
Second.
Yep, motion on the floor that has a second to adopt the amendment as, that's before us, as well as it's been described by Attorney Harper. Any discussion?
Yeah, I think I'd like to address this. I think that we value this foundation greatly, and as representatives of our community, I think that the best choices that we can make is to put the most knowledgeable people in those positions. So one of the reasons that we've kind of drafted this, I think, is because as a whole, I can't speak for everyone here, but as myself, I would want our best foot forward. And so, aside from politics, the people that have the best ability to serve in those positions should serve in those positions. So that's why we're here today.
I made a motion just to adopt the resolution, not say that like Dan is our best friend.
Well, Jeremy, I'm sorry.
Any additional discussion?
Well, I mean, I concur with Jeff, but I think that every member on this board is probably qualified and capable of serving in that position at one time or the other. So, but with that said, I mean, I certainly understand the gist of what Jeff is saying. But I think it's healthy to have two, the opposing parties, chair and vice chair. So, ready for a vote.
Any additional discussion?
I just wanted to echo Jeff and Jim's sentiments, and, we are political people. We run under a label, but this foundation is pretty sacred. We had special legislation to create it for us, and we should have as much equal representation as possible, no matter what party is quote-unquote in charge.
Any additional discussion? Harold, in an effort to pass the resolution, does it need to be read, or is there any particular procedure we need to go through to get this passed?
No, I mean, I
Other than a vote?
think the record can reflect that everybody has a copy of it, everyone's had an opportunity to review it and to ask some questions, take majority vote, pass the resolution.
Okay, all those in favor of the resolution as it's been presented and discussed, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, I'd like to open up the floor for nominations for vice chairman of the foundation. Are there any nominations?
I'll nominate Dan Whitten.
I'll second it.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second to nominate Dan Whitten as the vice chairman of the foundation. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries.
Mike, if I could just say something real quick. First of all, I want to thank you all for your kind words and the nomination. I have certainly taken on the mantle of this foundation from inception with you guys, and it's been an interesting journey, and we've come a long way. We've done some great things together through bipartisanism and cooperation. I will continue to do the same. So thank you so much for your vote of confidence. We got some exciting times ahead.
You know, in the spirit of work, exciting times and work to be done, if we could all maybe at this point look at our calendars to determine when that next meeting date would be, I think that might be helpful. And if we are looking at, for the quarterly meeting, if we're looking at June, of course, we have a council meeting scheduled for June 27th, so I'd ask if that would be an agreeable date for everybody here, or would it not work for anybody in particular?
Well, it would work for probably us, since we're going to be here, with the commissioners. The commissioner's schedule.
Commissioner's schedule, does that accommodate you folks?
It's wide open right now.
Mr. Biggs?
I'm fine with
Everybody all good?
That'll be at 5 again?
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, okay.
What time is your council, 5:30?
5:30. We may push that back if we need to.
Can't do that. Change the date.
What I'm thinking is, we're probably going to be doing interviews.
Maybe started earlier?
Or either started earlier or started later, one of the two. Because I'm assuming we're going to be not having a meeting before this meeting to interview. So, chances are we're going to be interviewing that night, at least looking forward at this point, for the independent audit.
Is 4:30, is that an acceptable time on that?
Yeah, I mean, the amount of time we need, again, if we only get 2 responses, it's going to be pretty quick. And if we get, I guess the question I have is, what if we get 20 responses? Do we want to interview them all?
I think we'd have to ferret through that and minimize the number rather than...
Yeah, I just want to point it out early.
Right.
So, we can be in agreement on this board that on June 27th at 4:30, we'll have our next meeting.
Okay.
And then, Scott, that gives, you can set the time in terms of when those...
Yeah, now we work backwards to get that published now.
Okay, very good.
It'll be on the it'll be on our county website, et cetera, we'll get it published in a couple of days later.
Very good. Okay, any other matter that needs to come before the board?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, meeting's adjourned.